Welcome to Caleb's Corner. I'm Caleb Koblenz, and today we're focusing on social-emotional learning from two perspectives. With us today are Cecilia Fowler, school psychologist, and Amy Scaglione, speech-language pathologist. Let's learn a little more about our guests. Cecilia, what made you want to become a psychologist?
Good question. I think I really like people a lot. And so I find like working with people to be really fun. And growing up, I grew up in a family where we had people with different needs and abilities and ways to communicate. So it made me think a lot about how people communicate differently, and get their needs met in different ways through relationship. So I knew I kind of wanted to work with people, and I really enjoy working with kids and young adults and families. So being able to work with them in school was exciting to me. So that's kind of some of what led me into being a school psychologist.
Amy, what made you want to be an SLP?
I thought that might be your first question. I first got introduced to it by my mom, who is a special education teacher for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students in Dayton, Ohio. And then I started to learn about it for myself. I started to learn about speech language pathology, and found it really interesting to learn about how the brain works and how language works. And then I started to get more into it and got some volunteer experience. And then my passion for being a speech pathologist really turned into advocating for those who can't advocate for themselves. So that's a big reason why I stuck with it. And the other part is I also love to be social, and it is so much fun to help people communicate, not just to advocate for themselves, but also to be social and enjoy life.
Why did you choose to work in the school district instead of private practice?
In a school district, in my experience, I get a much better sense of community and a much better sense of team. When you work in a private practice, they have what's called a productivity rate. And so much of your time has to be spent on certain tasks and only a small amount of time on other tasks. And so everybody is very, very busy, and it's very fast paced, and coworkers don't necessarily have time to talk to each other and collaborate. And in a school district, you have definitely are able to work together and collaborate and even work with students together at the same time. So I think that's the biggest pull for working in a school district. And also you get more time with your students. You get to have them for a whole school year or multiple school years. And you get to know the students better, which is better for therapy. And then it's just better overall for your connection and your impact.
What school did you go to for high school?
For high school, I went to Kettering Fairmont. It's in a suburb of Dayton, Ohio, where the Wright brothers are from, the guys who invented the airplane.
I didn't know that, Amy.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool to learn more things about you.
Yeah.
I'll say I went to high school in Seattle, Washington, which is where I grew up. I went to Roosevelt High School there.
Cool.
I'm sure there's some famous people who went there, but not the Wright brothers, and no one who I know off the top of my head.
It's Seattle. You don't need a famous person.
There you go.
Cecilia, would you rather walk across a log covered in fire ants or walk across the Grand Canyon on a tightrope?
Man, so when I saw that question for Amy, I was like, ooh, that's a good one. I'm gonna have to consider this. A log covered in fire ants or the Grand Canyon. So in Fantasyland, I would like to say that I would do the Grand Canyon on a tightrope because that just seems really cool. Like it'd be beautiful and breathtaking. Like if it were a real choice, I'd probably go for the fire ants though, because I don't think I have the balance and the tightroping ability to actually survive crossing the Grand Canyon on a tightrope. Whereas I hopefully could survive the fire ants.
Amy, would you rather walk across a log covered in fire ants or walk across the Grand Canyon on a tightrope?
Definitely fire ants. I am apparently afraid of heights. I think the Grand Canyon is gorgeous, but I think I'd rather just sprint really, really fast across the log of fire ants and hope that they didn't bite me. Wait a second. You didn't say if I had to wear shoes. Can I wear shoes when I run across this log? All right.
Yes.
I'll do the log, run across the log then.
I'd walk across the Grand Canyon.
It's very brave.
Yes, very brave. I'm guessing you may not have the same fear of heights that Amy has, Caleb.
Cecilia, what are the techniques you use to teach social emotional learning?
Ah, that's a great question. Yeah, so with social emotional learning, there are things that you can definitely teach, like to really target. Like if you're working one-on-one with somebody or in a small group, you might say, we're really going to practice mindfulness, for example. And with mindfulness, it's about being aware of our bodies and our thoughts. And so we might practice that by doing a mindfulness activity like meditating on something or like eating something and really paying attention to what we're eating and like how does it taste, how does it feel, like how do I feel as I'm eating this, what am I thinking about, to practice that skill. So that's one way we might work, like a technique for teaching social emotional learning. Another way is actually like through what we're doing right now, is through just having conversations with people and through just our interactions throughout the day, thinking about how we talk with people, how we model, asking about how are we feeling, what are we thinking, what other people might think or feel, talking through when we have a problem. For example, if I get really mad at somebody, I might stop and problem solve. Okay, gosh, what's going on? And if a student's doing that, okay, you're really mad at a situation. Let's problem solve, figure out what happened. How are you feeling now? What went on to make you feel that way? What may have been going on for the other person? What are their concerns? And let's figure out a way we can kind of meet both people's needs in that problem situation. So there are different ways we can do it. It's something we can teach like by doing small groups and lessons, and then also by just having experiences in our lives and being really aware of how we're approaching those.
Oh, interesting. What are the zones of regulation?
Ooh, I'm going to roll that one to our zones expert, Miss Amy.
Okay. So the zones of regulation are a way to classify emotions, and they're color coded. So you have 4 zones. So you have the green zone, the blue zone, the yellow zone, and the red zone. And green is calm and good feelings, meaning your body and your brain are ready to learn and interact. And then the yellow zone is kind of more of an elevated state of emotion. So it can either be negative emotions like like slightly annoyed or maybe some frustration, but it can also be just excited and hyper. So anything that brings you into a state where you're not as able to focus. The blue zone is more like sad, sick, tired. And then the red zone is reserved for anger and emotions that you feel like you don't have control of. And you can't think and you can't access your reasoning as much. And so it starts with that. So you're able to identify emotions on either a picture or maybe in a video, and you learn to identify emotions on yourself. and then you learn to identify emotions on other people. And this color-coded classification system helps kind of organize your thoughts about kind of an abstract concept, and makes that abstract concept more concrete and easier to understand, and kind of a way to like follow a formula almost. And then from there, we use that as a base to teach other social emotional learning concepts that I can get into, but I think you might have some more questions about that, so I'll hold on to that.
Amy, how are communication and social emotional learning related?
Perfect question. So, communication is not just your words. So, when I was in graduate school, they taught us that 80% of your communication is nonverbal communication, and only 20% is your actual words. So, nonverbal communication is your body language, your posture, your facial expression, and your tone of voice. All of those things can convey in a message of how you're feeling and what you're thinking. And how you're feeling, what you're thinking, since it comes out in your nonverbal body language, that's communicating, that's sending a message. And so what I do is use the zones of regulation and help people learn how to identify the emotions. Once you know how to identify them, you use that to increase your awareness of your own emotions and how your emotions might impact somebody else. And then you use that to identify emotions on someone else to determine maybe what you should do or say next. So it's emotions and communication are very intertwined. And so being aware of your body language and other people's body language or nonverbal communication, it helps strengthen your interactions with family, friends, coworkers, peers, teachers. So it impacts everyone you interact with, and your kind of quality of life or progression in whatever arena, be it school or vocational or social.
How do you teach communication?
So communication has lots of different areas. So there's language expression, so being able to say the words. There's receptive language, that's understanding what somebody is saying to you. So maybe somebody asks you, who did you see this weekend? And you might accidentally answer what you did. So that's understanding language. There's also what most people probably think of when they think of speech therapists. They probably think of articulation errors, or what was kind of historically known as a speech impediment. They probably also think of therapy for stuttering, or what's kind of more now referred to as speaking fluency. But we also work on voice if you have a voice issue. But what I do a lot at the transitions program is work on communication as far as social language, which we're talking a lot about today. The other part is using an AAC, or a speech generating device, which is an iPad like you're using, Caleb, with an application that has text to speech or icon to speech. So currently I'm teaching a lot of communication for social language, and teaching that social language, I use the zones of regulation program. It's a whole curriculum. And then I will incorporate other social thinking concepts from Michelle Garcia Winter, and some mind up practices. So mind up is a way to be mindful and a way to cope with your emotions. So I use zones of regulation to first identify the emotions. Then once we have that down, we think about kind of what's the social thinking concept of expected and unexpected. So is my behavior or reaction expected or unexpected? And then if it's unexpected, I reevaluate, and I might use one of those zones of regulation calming strategies or a mind up calming strategy to get myself from the yellow zone where I'm hyper, or the blue zone where I'm sad, or the red zone where I'm really mad. So I identify that emotion, I pick a calming strategy, use that, and then I make my way back towards the green zone. And so that's kind of how I teach communication as far as social emotional learning goes. And deciding if something is expected or unexpected, we think about person, place, and time to kind of help us decide that. And so that is a lot, probably not all, I'm sure I'm forgetting something, a lot of what I do to teach communication as far as social language and social emotional learning. And then communication as far as using an AAC or a speech generating device would probably take a whole nother interview, but that in a nutshell is taught through a lot of modeling and speaking on a device to the other person. So you have me with a device and you with a device is the ideal situation. And if we don't have two devices, then I might show you on your device and then you learn through modeling. So that's the basic first principle for that kind of learning, that kind of communication.
Cecilia, what does a typical day at work look like and how much involves social emotional learning?
Yeah, so typical day for me can vary a lot because I work at different schools. So right now I work with the transition program, I work with Legacy High School, and I work with Frontier Middle School. So it depends on which students I'm working with. In the morning, I might have like a meeting with a student where we, right now with distance learning, I might do like a Google Meet with them and check in, see how they're doing. I often talk with students about how school is going, how they're learning best, any road bumps they might be having with like a certain class or just school in general, and problem solve ways to make that better. My overall goal with students is, how we can make school better and make sure that they're able to contribute and belong. So that's something I really try to zero in on, whether I'm talking with a student in an interview like that, or like the next thing I might do in a day is meet with a student in person and do some assessment. So cognitive testing is one thing I do, and that looks at learning styles and how we learn best. So some people do really well with hearing information and responding back verbally, so like a lot of verbal communication. And some people do better if they're looking at information and like have pictures or words that they can support and also show their knowledge that way. And there are lots of different learning styles. The nice thing about doing assessments with students and figuring that out is that when you know how you learn best, then you can advocate for yourself and figure out, it's not that there's something wrong with your brain if you're having trouble in a class or on a subject. It's just that you might learn differently and need some different things in that class for it to make sense or to be able to show what you know. So I really like working with students on figuring out, how do you learn best and how can we make that, the style that your teachers know about and can help with at school too. I also have a lot of conversations with parents and family members about their students, about what's happening at home and at school. And sometimes things are going really well at home, and then there are challenges at school. Sometimes things like families might be having a hard time at home and things are going well at school, or great at home, great at school. Either way, we want to kind of find out, how can we learn from families about what they need and support them with what we're doing during the school day. Whether that's like getting them connected with other resources like the food pantry or counseling, or just hearing their feedback, especially right now with distance learning. A lot of families at home, they're seeing their kids in front of computers, or like for you, Caleb, young adults, you're doing a lot more independent learning. And so getting more feedback about how that's going for you and insights on what could that mean when we come back to in-person learning more is something that I'm thinking about a lot. Yeah, so those are a lot of the activities I do. I also have a lot of meetings with other staff members, people like Amy and special education teachers, other teachers in buildings, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and we collaborate on ideas of what we can do for like a group to work with students, what we can do to offer different supports and problem solving. Yeah, there are other things that come up too. Those are some of the main things that happen in a day. I try to walk a little bit during my day too. So like when we were in person more, I would try to get out on like walks with students, some just to get outside of the building a little bit. That's a very important thing to me.
Can you tell us about a time when you used social emotional learning techniques with a student?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm thinking about a student who was feeling pretty stressed out. They had had a really hard day. Just, at home, there'd been some stress. They got to school and had gotten into a fight with one of their friends. So they were just feeling stressed out and just sad and frustrated. And so they started yelling in a class and worked with them a little bit and came in and kind of talked through some of the stuff we've been working on before, right? So they had this problem that they're having at school where they were like yelling in a class and really frustrated and feeling angry. Before that, we had talked some about what's called collaborative problem solving. So thinking about your own perspective, what's going on in a problem, and what's the other person's perspective, and how can you kind of meet both of your needs. We'd also done some stuff on zones of regulation that Amy was talking about. So when that student was having that problem then, we were able to sit down, come away, usually first thing when you're really stressed out. Like I know for me, when I am so stressed out, like this part of my brain, the frontal lobe, flips out and I'm not able to process information the same way when I'm really calm. When that frontal lobe flips, it's all the sort of like decision making, language processing, reasoning skills. They're not on board the same way when we're calm, feeling good, well fed, well rested. So the first thing is really important to kind of calm down that when our lid flips like that. And oftentimes that means maybe physically moving, so walking away from the area, having someone reflect back what you're feeling can help you identify what's going on too. So having someone else say, wow, you look like you're really stressed out. That can actually help to calm us down. So that's something that I do with students when they're upset or confused too, or feeling really good. And then once we were calmed down, had walked a little bit, we were able to talk through, gosh, what was happening? That felt really hard, right? First starting with ourselves, like Amy was saying, first starting with how am I feeling? What's my self-awareness of my own emotions? So that's where we started. And then once we can kind of understood that of, okay, she said, I'm feeling angry, I'm upset, here's why, right? We could get all that out. Then we could start looking at, okay, so gosh, that's hard. How may that have affected other people when they saw you yelling? What do you think other people thought? And sometimes drawing that out helps. So what we did was take a piece of paper and drew out, here you were yelling, right? And here's your friend over here. And what were they thinking? They were maybe scared, confused, worried about you, right? So being able to kind of, once we're calm, problem solve through. And then with this student, we came up with a plan of, okay, so next time you're feeling kind of upset when you come to school, what can we do? Instead of going to class where it's like a stressful class and it's going to just get more difficult, first thing is if she's feeling stressed out, she's going to take a little break and a little time to draw before going into class. So the next time that's what she did and it worked great, right? It didn't mean that she's no longer stressed out and doesn't have problems come up. Because that's going to happen for all of us. We're all going to have problems that happen, unexpected things happen. It's about figuring out what can we do to help ourselves when that does happen, and that you don't have to figure it out on your own. So that's one example, but it's also sort of how we try and approach when little problems like that come up too in general. Does that make sense?
Amy, can you tell us about a time when you used social emotional learning techniques with a student?
Yes, I can think about, so I'll use social emotional learning in a small group setting. And so what it's a structured practice, that looks like showing a picture or a video or telling a short story in which something has gone wrong and emotions were expressed in an unexpected way. And we study that and we talk about it, and we'll talk about, okay, what did they do that was unexpected, and what impression did that make on the person they were speaking to, and then we might talk about what could they have done differently, and then we could talk about what zone that person was in and how they can get from either the red, yellow, or blue zone and back into the green zone where they can communicate calmly. So that's what structurally, when it's structured practice. Something more unstructured would be, I'm in the classroom and I notice a student is having a personality conflict with another student, and they might have kind of a big reaction. And another way we kind of look at what's an expected behavior and an unexpected behavior is also looking at the size of the problem. So you might think, okay, is this problem a small, medium, or big problem? And was my reaction to it small, medium, or big? So if we decide that I had a medium or big reaction to a small problem, we might talk about that. And we also talk about sometimes it might feel like a big problem, but then we stop and think about it and we think, okay, maybe it was actually a small problem. And so if I see somebody kind of having a big reaction to a small problem in class, I might say, hey, can I borrow you for a second? And I might say, name the nonverbal communication pieces that I noticed that were unexpected. So I might say, I noticed that you were kind of raised your voice a little bit and your tone sounded kind of angry. And I'm thinking that maybe, and then I'll name the zone that they're in. So I might say, I think that maybe you're a little bit in the yellow zone. And then I might say, what do you think? Where do you feel like you're at? What zone do you think that you're in? And they might agree, yeah, maybe I'm a little bit in the yellow zone. And then I might say, do you feel like your reaction, the size of your reaction matched the size of your problem? And the student said, no, maybe it was kind of a big reaction, but that this person in class really made me mad. And I say, okay, if that person made you mad, what could you do to get yourself back to the green zone? And then the student names her calming strategies. So she said, I could either go to the restroom and take deep breaths, or I can take a walk. And I said, okay, what if you don't have time to do those things? What can you do? And then she said, I can just take deep breaths in my seat where I'm at. And so that was kind of a situation recently that I worked with. And then something that I've just started doing with students that seems to be working pretty well is the social thinking concept, or zones of regulation concept, really, of using your inner coach. So I've kind of started using some flexible thinking and some inner coach strategies. And so what that looks like is kind of a short phrase that can be used as a really, really quick social story. So a social story is just a script of how to think to yourself. And so that flexible thinking phrase or positive inner coach is, I don't like when, and then you say what you don't like, and then you say, but I will be okay because I can. So in that situation, that student could have done, I don't like when this student in class makes comments to me, but it's okay because I can take a break and go for a walk, or whatever it is that student chooses to do to calm themselves down. So that's kind of the very structured pull-out therapy and versus the unstructured push in. I've kind of noticed it as it happens sort of thing. And that version of pushing in and noticing what I have seeing happen as it happens is something I can do, but that's something our classroom teachers can also do. So I make sure that the classroom teachers are aware of the strategies that we're learning in therapy, so that as they see it happening in class, they can quickly provide those tools and make a quick comment to the student and say, hey, do you need to use one of your calming strategies? What zone are you in right now? Or was that expected or unexpected? Or I think maybe you might want to do some flexible thinking right now. So those kind of things the teachers can just quickly redirect the student, and it kind of lets off a light bulb in your head as the student that, oh, that's right, I can use my calming strategy. Oh yeah, I can think about this differently. I'm going to be okay. And so that's what the technique would look like kind of in action.
Do you have any questions for me?
Do I have any questions for you? What zone do you think you're in most of the time? Most days, do you think you're in the green zone where you're calm and happy? Do you think you're in the yellow zone where you may be hyper or frustrated? Or in the blue zone where you're sad and tired? I have a guess, but I want to know what you think.
In the morning blue.
That's most of us, right? Tired? Hitting the snooze button?
Oh, and that's like a big social emotional skill there, Caleb, is identifying we don't always feel the same way. And like, what are some patterns that can contribute to how we feel and our mood? Pattern can be the snooze button in the morning.
At night green.
Sorry, are you a night owl?
Yes.
Yeah, Caleb, that is some very good social emotional awareness on your part to already know all on your own that emotions change throughout the day.
Yes, thank you for sharing with us social emotional learning techniques that can help students achieve success. Thank you for choosing the school setting for your career. We appreciate your investment in us as students. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Maybe just that everything is connected. It's hard to tease out one thing from another. So social emotional learning isn't really an isolated thing. It's connected to everything that you do. So our emotions impact us no matter what we're doing. It's life.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And thank you so much, Caleb, for having us on and interviewing and asking these questions. I do have something I'd like to add. I'm wondering, in terms of thinking about social emotional skills, Caleb, if you would be up for a social emotional skills challenge.
Ooh.
Would you be up for a challenge that I give you?
Yes.
Awesome. And I gave you like so little information, but you were willing to go with it. So the challenge that I have for you, and maybe for other folks who are listening, is a social emotional technique around gratitude. So there's a lot of research that gratitude, being appreciative for things around us, makes us feel better, like about ourselves and about our lives, improves our mood, and actually helps us with our relationships. And so a gratitude practice can be something like in the morning when you wake up, or at night, depending on what feels best for you, Caleb, on your zones, is to practice. You can choose which feels better for you, okay? Either picking, let's say, 2 things that you're grateful for and telling somebody or writing them down, or spending 2 minutes thinking about things that you're grateful for. So it could be like right now, I am grateful for Amy's fun background that she has. I'm grateful that the sun is out right now. I'm grateful I have a puppy at home who's very fun. I'm feeling grateful for my computer that it is working and didn't cut out at all. So there can be different things. It doesn't have to be a huge thing to be grateful for, or it could be. It can be little things. I'm grateful for the picture of the kitty on your screen, Caleb. It's making me smile. So I wonder, Caleb, would you be up for that, for each day spending either in the morning or at night, either 2 minutes thinking of things you're grateful for, or telling somebody 2 things you're grateful for? What would work for you?
Yes.
All of it.
All of it. Awesome. And then next time we see each other, we can chat about how that's going. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Perfect.
Nice job, Caleb. Thanks for having us on your show on Caleb's Corner.
Yeah.
This was
This was
very
great.
cool.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks for watching. Now we have edumacated you. Peace.
See ya.
Thanks, Caleb.